November 1996. Still working at Illyria Arts in Penfield, Ohio. And this month I turned 30. And that's all I can remember about November of 1996. Before we get started, you may notice the lighting looks a little weird. Or maybe you don't. I don't know. But my overhead light is broken. Little pole cord broke. I haven't had a chance to fix it. So I've got a light over here. And that's kind of behind me. Was throwing things off. So I have a flashlight pointing right at me to try to give myself a little more light. So hopefully it's not going to bug anybody. Let's get into the books that I read in November of 1996. I started off with The Dream Cycle of H.P. Lovecraft, Dreams of Terror and Death by H.P. Lovecraft. And this book had an introduction by Neil Gaiman, and it is a collection of all of the dream stories that H.P. Lovecraft wrote. The Randolph Carter stuff, I believe the Silver Key stuff is in here, which may cross over with the Randolph Carter stuff, the Cats of Ulthar, however you say that. I think there are some stories in here that don't have anything to do with dreams. I don't know how they chose what was going to go in here. But it's a decent collection of H.P. Lovecraft stuff. I think it was at this time that Del Rey put out 3 volumes. Same cover artist, same type of design in all of them. And I think if you had all 3, it was all of his works. And this was the one that focused on his dream stuff. Then I went from H.P. Lovecraft, crazy cosmic horror and dream worlds and all that, to Downsize This by Michael Moore. It's political humor back before Michael Moore went insane. I don't know. Maybe it's anger that's causing some of these political comedians to seem to go off the deep end. Back in the day, Michael Moore had a TV show that was hilarious. I think he had a couple TV shows, or they just changed the name of it. I don't know. And he had some books like Downsize This, which I thought was hilarious. But then years went by and he started putting out the movies like Bowling for Columbine and whatever came after that. I don't remember the names of all the movies, but he just seemed to get closer and closer to the edge of insanity and then fell over. Back in the day, he was pretty funny. He made good points, I think. Downsize This by Michael Moore. Then we have Hercules, Serpent's Shadow by Timothy Boggs. This is another novel based on the Hercules TV show. And in it, Hercules and his buddy Aeolus fight a sea serpent and some other bad guys. Just good, pulpy fun. Then, the one book-ish, because I forgot to grab something before I started. The one book I have, Miskatonic University. And this is edited by Martin H. Greenberg and Robert Weinberg. This is an anthology of horror stories that all take place at Miskatonic University, based on the works of H.P. Lovecraft. I've always been a sucker for like forbidden knowledge and that kind of thing. Students getting into things they shouldn't be, things that are going to drive them insane or destroy the world or whatever. So this is a decent collection. Does it tell me how many stories? I should have checked that first. I don't know. Bunch of stories. And you've got people like Mort Castle. Lois H. Grash, Will Murray, Christy Golden. Bunch of great authors. Bunch of fun stories. And like most anthologies, some stories are better than others. But I like this. I dig this kind of stuff. Then we have, I was all over the place in November of 1996. Maybe it was that midlife crisis turning 30. False Allegations by Andrew Vax. This is a Burke novel. Burke is an under the radar guy in New York. And he fights for children, basically, or people who are being sexually abused. But mainly it's about children. And so he ends up taking a job for this guy named Kite, who debunks. Now, the way this is worded, and it's been a while since I read it, but the way this is worded, it says this guy Kite debunks false sexual allegations. And to me, that makes it sound like he proves that false sexual allegations aren't false. If you're debunking something, you're proving the opposite, right? And so if you're debunking false sexual allegations, but I think it's a guy that, I think Kite proves that that certain sexual allegations are false, which goes against basically everything that Burke stands for, but he gets involved in it, and it may turn out, to Kite's dismay, that these sexual allegations are true. Andrew Vax's work, it's brutal, it's dark, he has wonderful characters, and the Burke books are just fantastic. Then we have Flash Gordon, The Time Trap of Ming the 13th. And this says adapted, by Con Stevenson. And the reason it's adapted is because there was a series of novels that were adapted from the newspaper comic strip. So they're not original. They're just basically novelizations of a comic strip. And Con Stevenson was a pen name for Ron Goulart, who has written tons of stuff under his own name and has been a ghostwriter for tons of people. He was the ghostwriter for William Shatner's Tech War. And in this book, Flash Gordon, way in the future, a descendant of Ming the Merciless, Ming the 13th, sends assassins. There's time travel, sends stuff back in time to try to assassinate Flash Gordon and change history so that it works out better for the Ming family, I guess. Just good pulpy fun. Then, a little more comedy, nonfiction. I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. By Stuart Smalley, parenthetically, really by Al Franken, which is what it says on the book. It says Stuart Smalley, and then parenthetically, really by Al Franken, because Stuart Smalley was a character played by Al Franken. I used to love Al Franken, thought he was hilarious. He was on Saturday Night Live, went into politics. There have been some allegations. But Stuart Smalley was this character that he played on Saturday Night Live who did these daily affirmations. And so this book is an entire year of daily affirmations. And he says at the beginning that he's just going to get up, shower, eat breakfast, or exercise, I don't remember, exercise, shower, eat breakfast, and then record his daily affirmations. He's not going to make any changes. And then there's like a little note that says, I will get dressed between showering and eating breakfast. And that's on New Year's Eve. And then January 1st, he has his first daily affirmation. And by the end of it, he's like, oh, I wish I hadn't promised I wouldn't edit or do a second take or anything. So there's like 3 January 1st entries. Because the thing about Stuart Smalley, even though he looks in the mirror and says, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me, he actually has crushing anxiety and self-doubt. But very, very funny stuff. And then finally, I believe I could have pulled an omnibus off of the shelf, but I forgot. The last book that I read in November of 1996 was X-Men Mutant Empire, Book 2, Sanctuary by Christopher Golden. Wonderful, wonderful author, Christopher Golden. And in this book, Magneto has basically taken over Manhattan, made it a haven for mutants. He has reprogrammed a bunch of Sentinels to be his guards, essentially. And so the X-Men, it's going to be his base for eventual world domination for mutants. The X-Men, some of them are stuck in space. The rest are on Earth, trying to stop Magneto. But, of course, there's this sort of divide in mutantdom. Because some people, even good mutants, can see what Magneto has to say and think maybe this haven and eventual, maybe they're not completely okay with world domination, but, they want safety. They just want to be treated like everybody else. Excuse me. So that's X-Men Mutant Empire Book 2, Sanctuary by Christopher Golden. What's going to happen? Are the X-Men going to be able to stop Magneto? I'm assuming it's all going to come to a head in Book 3. Not a huge X-Men fan. I've mentioned that before. But I am a Christopher Golden fan. And I do like these original comic book novels. So I do have quite a few that are X-Men related. Even though they're not my favorite. That is all that I read in November of 1996. The year that I turned 30. And I did not think of a question, as usual. I was busy trying to figure out the lighting here, so I wasn't just hiding in the shadows, although that could be fun. So you know what? I'm not going to ask a specific question. I feel like I had one in mind days ago and forgot about it. But just do any of these books interest you? Or I suppose, what are your feelings on political comedy? Do you watch political comedy shows or movies, political satire? Do you read the books? As I mentioned before, I believe in the previous video in this series, I used to love watching Real Time with Bill Maher. I can't remember the name of the Michael Moore show. It was on like ABC, one of the major networks. And I thought that was a really good show. And I used to read their books and found them funny and informative. But then you've got people like Dennis Miller, who I used to think was one of the funniest dudes in the world. And he's gone insane. He's like super conservative. Maybe he always was and just kept it to himself. I don't know. But so I don't think I've read too much political satire, political comedy lately. But what are your feelings on that sort of thing? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All the usual YouTube stuff. If you care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is EricSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH5757. That's all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.